podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead Podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. This is the Ask Your Oldhead Podcast with Justice Rajee. I have my guest, Alyasha, joining me tonight or today or whenever it is that you intend to be listening to this. Alyasha, welcome to the podcast.
Peace, Justice. Thank you for having me.
All right, peace. So, as always, I like to start by giving you an opportunity to give some reverence and love and respect to anybody that you want to give some props and some love and respect to before we get into talking. So,
oh, wow.
Have at it.
The gods in the earth, my old earth, my older brother Virtuous, all the brothers that I came up with, and anybody that's ever been good to me or helped me or gone out of their way to be to lend a helping hand, impart, hit me to some information. Knowledge Divine, who I've, as of late become pretty close with. Man, that's a long list.
Indeed.
Yeah. It's a long one. That could take.
Indeed. As I like to say, no one's, anyone unmentioned, I got you on the next one.
Sure.
Because we all got, and I'll give a little extra love myself to my brother, I Majestic, and to my nephew, Messiah, because me and Majestic have been recording something just about every week for going on 7 or 8 weeks. And every episode, I can hear, like, my nephew pops in, his son, my nephew, pops in at some point kind of with the, hey, Pops, like, I want some Pops time. And, he's been very gracious in sharing some time to allow me and his father to talk and record every week. So I just want to show him some love because that's my man.
That's feast.
So,
is he still skateboarding?
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah, we got to get him out there with you.
Told him Majestic, I was like, whatever he needs. That's, skateboard product. I've been in that industry for 30-something years, or attached to that industry. Anyway.
Word. Well, let's we roll into it. So I always start out with, what is a standard or practice, something that you try to do as you move through the world?
To-do lists. Daily make to-do lists, and it's something that at 3 different junctures in life, one, I used to watch my old earth do it. And then later, I was roommates with this older brother named Ken Carabello, also known as Bosco Money. He was a rapper signed to Def Jam Records, and he always used to be like, always carry a pen so that you can write your ideas down, because you can always find something to write on. And then later, when I was getting knowledge, but the concept of to-do lists help me, because I can't speak for everybody else, make concepts become crystalline. I'm a very visual person, and I, right, wrong, or differently, it has helped me with I was about to say I'm not very organized, and that's not true. I'm not as organized as I would like to be, but this helps me organize thoughts and things to do, and
Right.
concepts, and prioritize. So sometimes there'll be a to-do list and then an addendum or revisions, multiple revisions that are shuffled around and prioritized. Okay, get this done first, get that done first. And I think it's also it's a thinking exercise, and it helps, flex your, I don't know the technical term, but flex your brain.
Right, like you get opportunity to move your, like, all the things you already, like, you have on your plate or have to do, or around you, and give them some sort of order that they would not be able to give themselves, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
And frame, where they need to be. What, do I really need to get this done? Is this a want? Is this a need? So that's that's a practice that I've stuck to for years.
So with your to-do list, do you keep them? Do you put them in a central place, or is it kind of depend on is it a time and space and circumstance sort of deal?
It depends. I used to, I don't want to call them journals, but as a designer, I keep, either composition notebooks or black books. That will usually have like sketches and notes and thoughts and to-do lists. So when I was younger and shaking and moving a lot more, I definitely have several boxes full of notebooks full of to-do lists and illustrations and conceptual drawings and plans. I think that was another thing, like, again, it's like the word becomes flesh. So it's like putting the word, speaking things or writing them into reality.
Yeah. I remember at some point back in my studies, at least, it was a concept that one of the important things of moving things between like writing them down and also saying them verbally is that it works in different parts of your brain.
Sure.
And so when you're putting things kind of in more than one form, that it kind of changes the way you look at it. Also, it helps you with remembering it, or thinking about it in other ways, like the actual act of turning something into something physical by writing it, as opposed to it just being like, I have this thought, it's in my head, and I'm returning to it. Then also I write it, then in a weird way, you bring it back in when you read it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, in that, so when I was getting 120, one of the practices was, so we got math and alphabet. I think we spoke about this the other night. We got math and alphabets. And, one of the things was quoting everything in the mirror. Stand on your square. So I had to write them in my notebook or, in my composition book. And then quote everything that you had, staring yourself in the eyes in the mirror. So writing it and then speaking it. And then also dealing with yourself.
Right. It's kind of interesting because I realize I haven't done that particular activity in some time, and I probably should return to it. But it also think about, in the current media space, the show Insecure, the lead character has this whole piece of talking to herself about what's on her mind and what she's dealing with, and that entity, how that entity responds to her. There's some bits and pieces with that, but the the kind of the impact of a pretty, I guess you could call, simple tool in a mirror, but then you can turn it into this sort of literally a mentally reflective space.
Sure. It's absolutely multi-purpose. Self-disciplinary, self-reflective, speaking things into existence, and there's a bunch of things.
So
making sure you're standing straight,
right, like what's your body position and how you
exactly correcting your body language, developing body language.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't very aware of. Well, it's always interesting.
Especially not nowadays.
Yeah, people that don't manage their body language well, and like they'll say something nice, but their body language is like, "I hate you" or this thing, and I don't, and I give them a lot of grace because I'm like, I don't think they're meaning to appear disingenuous. They're actually maybe trying to say what they feel is the right thing, even though they feel differently, but they clearly are not happy.
I would chalk a lot of that up to technology. I think it's become a buffer where people don't have to pay attention to their body language, because I know exactly what you're talking about. But I think generationally that was less of a thing. I mean, I'm free-born. I'm about to be, power cipher, and so it's not on some like the old head stuff, but it's definitely interesting to watch people, and even catch myself at times, because the human interaction is so much less now. But yeah, I get that. Absolutely. It's very interesting. People don't pay attention to it nearly as much.
So I got another question related to the mechanics of the notes. I know you're a designer and you have an aesthetic eye for these sorts of things, or probably have. I'm thinking you might. Do you have like a pen preference? Do you like look for certain type of writing materials and units? And I ask this because, well, I'm just asking that. Do you, or is it just like whatever pen I got?
Absolutely. And this is going to be long-winded, as probably a lot of my answers will be.
Hey, go for it.
Go off into several tangents, and hopefully they all come back to a place. I like felt tip pens. I like the friction that the friction on the paper that they drag against the paper. I have a really hard time writing with ballpoint pens, and inevitably and also like fountain pens for the same reason I like felt tip pens and Sharpies, but like a Papermate felt tip pen and or a Sharpie are two of my favorites, and fountain pens, like actual like quilled pens. And because when I was young, I was labeled learning disabled and I was dyslexic. And had horrible handwriting, and I was like, I was writing 2s backwards and 3s backwards, and I just went to my older's house. Last time I was at my older's house, I found a bunch of drawings from when I was really little, like 7, 8, 9, and before that, and all sorts of stuff was upside down and backwards. And it was a trip to watch, but I also remember like putting in the work, and so. Then I got into graffiti and having a definitive, like there was pride in your penmanship, and that's how I developed pride in my penmanship was through the space of graffiti. But for whatever reason, and some people write beautifully with ballpoint pens, but there's just not. It's not tactile enough. It's too fluid. Yeah. I don't know how else to articulate that. And but I just spent a lot of time perfecting my handwriting, and maybe it was just because it was, Sharpies and markers. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say as a, similarly, I doodle a combination of notes and words and lines and what have you to record thoughts, and over the years in different forms, from when I was I guess MC, a person that would write rhymes, to things I did even before then, like this was a big deal when I remember being in school, like, don't doodle when you're supposed to be taking notes. And I'd just be like, but it helps. I like doodling. I like my little characters and pictures and whatever that are, hanging out on this paper where I'm also, writing down about the War of 1812 or whatever. But also really like getting a preference for the way certain things feel in your hand when you write. And I remember with my daughter, there was a stage of just like certain things, like from an art perspective, she just doesn't like the way it feels. You know what I mean? Like she like markers better than crayons. You know what I mean? We'd be, oh, we'll use these crayons. She'd be like, no. Like, you know what I mean? Like you try to get her to, but no, baby, it's fine. We're gonna make some art. She'd be like, can I use those? Can I use this other thing we got over here instead of this? And I think most people, you have a feeling when you're using certain utensils or tools to do something, but we're often encouraged to not be picky in a sense or find our comfort, and I think sometimes that people not finding that comfort is a barrier to them then actually using the tool for the thing the tool is for, right? So they don't like writing because people made them write with stuff they don't like. I mean, so then it's like a chain of, maybe where you don't engage with it the same because you don't actually like how you feel when you're doing it, and I always wonder. So I try to inquire how people use things, and then especially someone like yourself that has done a lot of creative work. My experience with folks who do a lot of creative work is that there are other pieces to like their process that matter to them being in the right state of mind and what have you to like get rolling, so to speak.
I'm hit.
Indeed. So we'll move to question 2, as I like to call it.
Okay.
So relationships broadly defined. What's something that you understand now or do now that maybe you did differently as a younger man in your life?
Ooh, that's a really heavy, not heavy. I shouldn't look at it as heavy, but it's been interesting and it's been a difficult space for me. When I was younger, I was far more agreeable, and therefore, far more agreeable. And then, so we moved to New York from Massachusetts in 1977. So I was God years old, and basically got my ass kicked every day until I was 13, 14. And then decided, like, okay, well, you're either going to be it's like training day. You're either a wolf or a sheep. And then just started hanging out with the bad kids. And then you start to, there's 2 parts to that. One of them is very healthy and the other one's very unhealthy. But you decide, your decision making is different. And then after that, I started looking for something. I got knowledge of self, and and in that space, I had this list of prerequisites, and I wasn't. So that the former part of this conversation makes sense. I was just malleable and very agreeable before, and I was kind of like, okay, just kind of not even go with the flow, like just didn't draw a lot of my own opinions. And so relationship wise, like that doesn't really work out very well for anybody. Yeah. And then kind of flipped to the contrary, where I just had this, it wasn't even a suit of armor. At first it was a suit of armor, like plate mail, like heavy, like gothic plate mail, if you will. For anybody that doesn't know what that looks like, that's like if somebody said a suit of armor, like the whole deal, right? Not like chain mail or plate mail chain mail or lamellar armor or whatever. Now I'm nerding out on armor stuff. But so I was in a walking castle. and I didn't know how to create a space for vulnerability anymore. This was a coping mechanism, built from a space of trauma, and then also had this like a very unrealistic list of prerequisites for women that just was like, so it was like, one, you're never really going to get to know me, and I'm not going to allow you to, and I'm not going to allow myself the space to accept love or vulnerability. So it's very self-defeating. You know, it's like, you know, and you're young and a 5%er. So it's extra, you know, you know, you can't tell me I'm making the owner.
Right.
And so it took a really exceptionally long time to allow myself to one, to realize it, and then two, to actually learn how to activate it. And then simultaneously set boundaries. And I guess that's what I was trying to say to the very early space. A young me had no sense of boundaries. And so those have been the, you know, interesting growing pains. And I'm grateful, you know what I mean? Like I am where I am. But allowing myself to be vulnerable, but also still firm.
So, if I could ask, because I've found in my engagements, just like I said, broadly, the ability to establish a boundary and then in practice, when I'm asking other people to like adhere to it, also understand, like, for me, like, oh yeah, this is why I have that boundary, right? Is there a slice of something that helps you with determining a boundary, and if I can narrow that to something more specific if need be, but just, is there something that you use or an idea or a concept that you have in terms of your understanding of yourself that helps you with, like, okay, for these particular things, I gotta give you the Bo Jackson stiff arm on that one. Like, what's the is there any particular cues that help you with, you know, knowing what things to set? Maybe.
That's a good question. I think just taking a lot of self-inventory and being more self-aware, and then self-inventory of like what worked, what didn't work, why did things go wrong in the past, where did they go wrong, what didn't you say?
That's a powerful one.
Yeah, you know, your word is your bond, right? But also what you don't say is also something that you say. You know.
It's not only what you add, what you choose to restrict. You know what I mean? Is as much an impact on the reality as what you put out there.
Exactly. Yeah, and just a lot of, like, it's funny, right? So we're in this school of thought, you know, knowledge of ourselves, and it's so multifaceted outside of, you know, the math alphabets in 120. And there's so much of I just kind of like going back and, like, you know, learning how to be mindful of that space.
Indeed.
And then writing things that, like, okay, I need this. You know, I need to be able to present myself authentically, and I need to be in a space where you know, whoever I'm, you know, whatever woman I'm involved with, you know, or trying to build a relationship with, or building a relationship with, you know, I've got to be able to like stand on my square and be authentic, and but you know, I won't stand for them projecting their fears into my authenticity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and if I can't be seen in my own light, or on my own square, I've got to like kind of look at myself and be like, yo, like, are you bullshitting, or are you real? Like, you know, where are you at with this?
Indeed.
First, and then secondly, if they're on some bullshit, it's like, all right, I gotta go. That's when you give them the Heisman arm. Like, all right,
yeah.
you know, enjoy that.
Indeed. Indeed. And I
himself.
You know, and the thought that came to me when you adding on about what, you know, the things that we don't say, you know, often reflect the things that we're maybe unsure about, or we, at least from my experience, when things are going well, typically some of the things that we'll be ginger with saying are things that we know will possibly have a very explosive impact. Right.
Sure.
And that, yeah, I mean, so it'll be like, let me think when I'm going to say this one, because I know this might go, you know, it might go very well,
right?
But it also may go very bad. And so then, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've also been in a couple positions where that were remarkably frustrating, and I got to the point where I just gave up speaking, because it didn't matter how it was presented or what was said or how it was said. You know, it's like, you know, we say what you mean. I'm practicing that, and not being afraid of it being met with disdain, or, you know, or not being, you know, like, but just not even being the other person, that, you know, the woman not even taking the time to try to process it. And then at that point you're like, well, you know, I don't even need to bother. Like, why would I try anymore? I just got to go.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
So third construct question I like to go to is, what's just something that's really important to you right now, you know, in your world and what you're doing or what have you? What's just something that's really important to you at this moment in time?
Readdressing a bunch of my self-disciplines. 122, my physicality. Like, I need to get back on my skateboard. Building a climbing wall. I'm going to rewrite my history. Those things, because, you know, one of the early things that I was taught is, if you don't use it, you lose it. And we know that. I mean, that's just science tells you that. You know, if you don't utilize your brain, you lose the elasticity. That's the word I was looking for earlier. So, yeah. And now, like, what better time than the present?
Indeed.
And I'm really hard on myself. I'm really good at beating myself up. So part of me is like, man, why'd you wait till now? But I got to get past that. So that's something that's really important to me right now. I used to skateboard like at least twice a week with a bunch of brothers that are like around my age. And then recently I got into climbing, and then the climbing gym's closed. And so I've been building this climbing gym in my office. I want to start doing some weight training. skateboarding is multi-purpose like climbing, but skateboarding is like cardio plus problem solving. It keeps you sharp because you're moving and there's this split second problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of the reason I like climbing. It's part of the reason I like jujitsu, is the problem solving aspect of those spaces.
Disciplines. Yeah. I like to peer into that with the skateboarding as I would like to call a all right, so my uncle gave us these like kind of polycarbonate weird skateboard things when we were, I was like 7, maybe 8 or 9, maybe younger. And we never could totally figure them out. I'm just keep it 100. We just roll down the street on them, or like have somebody pull you on a bike and then like jump off it, like kind of into some grass. Like, you know what I mean? We just never got it down. For you with skateboarding, was there something that happened to help you kind of develop the skill with the skateboard? Like
yeah. So, and this is, I'm a huge advocate of skateboarding, obviously, and I've worked in the skateboard industry basically since I discovered skateboarding, or a few years after I discovered skateboarding. So, I'm really physically awkward as a kid. Really had a disdain for what people might call authority. Team sports was like, why am I doing push-ups? Because this dude didn't make
get
the goal.
On the line,
you know
son.
what I mean? Like, I was like, I don't know you. Like, the Dave, I don't know you. I don't like you. I hate you. I hate your guts. And I was like, this is whack. Like,
indeed.
And was just physically awkward. And then I kind of played soccer for a little while, and then I was like, nope. And then my mom put me in Aikido with a mutual friend's dad was an Aikido. He used to teach at New York Aikikai, and I took that for a little while, and that was cool, and that felt better because it was about me. And then I discovered skateboarding. And the thing that I loved about skateboarding was, like, 1, there's the adrenaline. 2, it was, as a culture, it was a very like independent culture, and everybody looked different. There wasn't like, people like, oh, he's like, that's like skater style, but like it was everything. But the most important things for me were, 1, like the self accountability. If I want to make a trick, it's just me. Like, there's no coach. Nobody's going to yell at me. However, I want to learn this stuff. So I have to apply myself. So you develop your own physicality and your own athleticism. And it's like a martial art, but there's no coach. You develop a peer group. You end up meeting a bunch of friends that are in the same space, and they'll cheer you on, and they might like kind of give you some tips on how they've achieved whatever maneuver or trick. But that was the thing that I really loved, and it actually pushed me into a space of pushing myself in other spaces. And it really helped me develop a self accountability.
All right. So something that you had brought up with the commonality of the problem solving piece, because the thing I do remember, actually, which one, like, because I knew kids that had like skateboards that I considered real skateboards. I'm like, that's a real skateboard. Like, you can put your foot all the way on it. Like, you can put both feet on it and not fall off and stuff like that. And then so when my memory of skateboarding, the part is you have a feel, you have a physical response like to how the ground feels under your feet, right? And similar when you're climbing, because I do know a little bit about the rock climbing. We were doing that for years, and Murph is she was super duper avid rock climber as a young person, and we've off and on done it since we've lived out here. Is when you get on the wall the first time, like you may just kind of be like, oh, I'm just going to get climbing, right? So climb up, right? And then once you get a little bit in and you start touching the different types of surfaces, you realize like you can't just like grab rocks and climb like a ladder, right? Because there's different shapes and the feel them and the way your body has to engage with it changes. And is there something, and similarly from folks that I know that are also jujitsu practitioners, they talk about the problem solving aspect of the engagement. Do you think for you, is there a commonality in that kind of that interplay between the tactile reality, but also that you are actually, mentally making decisions, like
Absolutely,
that have a direct feedback?
For years, I'd been like, I had a bunch of friends that were like getting into jujitsu, and brothers that I knew, and it's interesting because part of getting knowledge yourself, one of that we had to get a job, had to have a watch, had to have a license, or ID, and had to do martial arts. Those are like things that we had to be doing while we were getting 120. And just something you're supposed to be doing in perpetuity. And so I kind of fell off in the martial arts space and always paid attention to it. And so the jiu-jitsu thing started to pop up and boom. And especially being in Southern California is one of the meccas for the sport, or the art rather, depending on who you talk to.
Indeed.
And I'll call it the art. And because so much of it was attached to MMA, I was kind of like, it's some like meathead stuff. I'm not really interested in that. And then a good brother named Tone that I know was like, hey, you should come and check this out. And I went, and within sorry, I have to laugh because I was literally getting thrown around by this woman that was maybe 5 feet tall. And I practiced martial arts for, 6 years as a young adult, right? And I didn't think I was a badass because there's always somebody better. But in that short melee of this diminutive woman manhandling me, and the story is pretty funny because I started to giggle. And more partially a nervous reaction, but also like, wow, this is real deal. Like, this is effective. She gave me the mom look, like, oh, it's funny.
Oh, this is a joke to you.
Like it's a joke. Like when you try to cover your booty, like, oh, really? And then just proceeded to get more buck wild. But in that, there was this very visceral sense of the familiarity to skateboarding. And I was like, I need to be thinking really quickly. I got to be switched on. You can't. It's the thing with skateboarding is you can't be laissez-faire with it. You can't half be there. You have to be present. And I dug that. And it was very similar. And it's split. It's very split second, problem solving. What do I do now? I'm here. Where do I go now? And I wasn't a practitioner yet. But a very similar, almost identical feel. And that's kind of where I was like, okay, I'm in.
Word. Yeah, I think it's always fascinating to me the way certain, especially physical activities, that we will find appealing, at least, will have some common threads, but then also how limited sometimes sort of the physical activities we're exposed to in our kind of like general, I'm an advocate of, I think there should be martial arts like in school, like all public school, like every day, like you should have some choices, and like I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I think it would improve things. I know some people think it would maybe go the other way, but I think there's a lot of people that would go like, oh, first of all, everybody has a baseline kind of competency defending themselves, which makes it a lot harder to like pick on people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Judo is mandatory.
Yeah.
But I agree with you 100%. It would also probably make people, depending, because there's always some knuckleheads and sociopaths and psychopaths within our society. But there would probably there's a lot of people that mellow out once they learn an art.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, I don't need to be. It kind of what's the word? Negates the insecurity. It's like, I'm good at this. I don't need to peacock and chest beat anymore because I'm actually good now.
Yeah, I have a base. I feel like I can protect myself. I don't have to be like hyper vigilant in attack stuff that may not actually be an attack, but just in case it's an attack, I'm going to attack it.
Sure, exactly.
I'm not going to find out.
And letting you know that I'm a bad man.
I'm no good. So I wanted to swing back to something because when you're talking about skateboarding and styles, because it is a thing, or like the idea that like there's a skate styles and then there's this other styles. In your experience, like how knowing the things like the work that you've done, is there a did you ever find any conflict in sort of like being who you are, showing up how you show up in those spaces versus whatever people perceive, someone that's into skating or skates should do? Like, how did that kind of work for you?
I was the first designer for Fat Farm, right? Mm-hmm. I helped create the brand and worked with Russell. And my man Paul Middleman and a brother named Dom Trenier, who's left us, unfortunately, and the cat named Eli Gessner, who went on to start Zoo York. But in that, I came from skateboarding, but I was also like producing hip hop records and making beats. But because I was a skateboarder and this was such an alien space, and I was younger. Mm-hmm. So Russell used to do the like, you're a skateboarder. What do you know kind of thing. It's like, and I definitely fell into the space of like overcompensating and having to puff my chest out to the point of almost having a physical altercation with him. But I was wisdom, knowledge. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had a lot to prove and a big chip on my shoulder, especially when somebody's trying to push your buttons. Not defending the space, just describing.
Indeed.
But I've always been like very proud of being a skateboarder. I think, and still, the whole, it's like adapt and overcome. That's kind of the skateboard internal moniker, or DIY headspace, figure it out. And there's always, especially being a black man and being a skateboarder, people always look at you sideways. A lot of times I would show up at the rally, for the parliament. People would be like, huh? All right. I'm not tripping. It's, not really worried about how you perceive me. Those are your insecurities, not mine.
Indeed.
And it took to that point. I just said like I had to overcompensate when I was really young in that space, but more so because somebody was like trying to push buttons, and also devalue what I was saying, which was also weird from a leadership perspective, because it's like, wait, you hired me, and I created this thing for you.
Right, and
now you want to like devalue what I'm saying? Like that doesn't make sense to me. And I would tell him that in front of his cronies or whatever. So whatever.
Well, I've never had.
I hope I answered the question.
Oh, you did. Absolutely. Okay. I have no personal experience with Russell Simmons, but from my reading of articles and things, he appears to me to be someone who can looks to getting people who may be in conflict next to each other. Not conflict's not the right word. May have tension to try to get to an outcome. Maybe not necessarily that is always a pleasant experience for the people that are having it. Yeah, I mean, that's just my interpretation of, at least what I've been able to garner over the years.
Yeah, I don't know. It was interesting. I'll leave it at that. Like
Indeed.
I respect some of his accomplishments in the space.
Yeah.
But in 91, 92, as a 21, 22-year-old, I wasn't a fan. I was like, I don't like you.
Word up.
I'll leave it at that.
Indeed. So I guess not totally a pivot, but it kind of, as we've stepped into that, piece, your world a little bit. I had a question on that. So I have seen in this current age, there's a big piece to like entrepreneurship, and then start this, and then brand that, and then do this other thing, and that like apparel specifically. I've seen things where it's like, yeah, all you need to do to make apparel is boom, 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 fill in the dots, and now you're a business, right?
Have an Instagram account.
Yeah. Which always seems, I know the difference between, as a person that sells some sweatshirts and t-shirts, selling some sweatshirts and t-shirts, and like, I have a brand and an entity with like the manufacturing and the pieces and the parts and the like. Is there something you could speak to around creating something, but having, I don't know, I worry that people are making things seem easier than they are.
Yeah.
Or that people are going to make a lot of bad clothes because they think they can make clothes.
Well, so that's I mean, there's a bigger overarching conversation. It's the conversation of the internet is going to democratize or make an even playing field for everything, and to a degree, sure. But what it's also done is it's made, and styles is it's an objective. Like what I think is stylish, somebody could disagree with, and vice versa. The one man's trash argument.
Yeah.
But what it has done is that it has given a platform for a conversation of, if it creates capital, then it is good. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if I sell a bunch of trash because I have whatever myriad of followers. It's like it's like the argument of, let's say like a Biggie or Tupac conversation, or I don't know a lot of contemporary rappers' names, but like somebody saying that Tupac is a better rapper or lyricist, right? Than Biggie because he sold more records. And generationally, the conversation would have been like, "You're out of your mind." He's he's a remarkable performer, and definitely like on a general performer stamp, like he's an actor. He does all these other things, right? And therefore has a platform to sell more records. But it doesn't make him a better lyricist. And so I say that to say, like, now you have like weird mom style, like, or weird dad style, or, and I'm older. So a lot of this stuff's not for me.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of that. But what it has done is that you can basically put trash out now. And as long as it's beaten into people's heads, it will be perceived as good. And it allows for the space of quote unquote entrepreneurship versus designership. So it's more about marketing now than it is about design. You have situations where somebody will like, I had this happen to an old boss of mine there was a logo that incorporated like a smiley face from some old house, like a Detroit house music record label. I think Todd Terry had something to do with it. I don't remember the specifics of the whole thing. So Damon, my old boss, had this brand called Fact, F-A-C-T, and they had done this collaboration with this record label. They put it out. Then some other brand that has like 40 times the followership, right? Decides they're just going to do a knock of the same logo. And then, of course, somebody, some armchair general or, screen keyboard general goes, oh, these Fact dudes bit your shit. And the argument, I read a bunch of the comments, and the argument from a bunch of the kids was because even though Fact had done this thing with the original artist and the original label, they were still the quote unquote copycats, and it didn't matter because this other younger brand with more followership sold more. Yeah. It was crazy. So reading things like that is worrisome.
Yeah, say the least.
And outside of that, it's like, it sounds contradictory. Like I also realize, like, it is about the voice of the youth, right? And the youth are going to make the decisions. The problem is the platform that largely dictates what's going on right now, and is the conduit for information is Instagram. Not so much Twitter. I mean, Twitter definitely, but like Instagram is like the spot to go to. Yeah. And if you, I don't know, there's a lot of like cultural issues, and I kind of like went off on a tangent from the original question statement, but it's like a large thing. Like it's the amount of celebrity worship is bizarre to me, and scary. Not scary, but it just grosses me out.
Yeah,
It grosses me out when I talk to people who I've respect and feel are intelligent, that are like, apologists for celebrities. I'm like, why are you?
Yeah.
Excuse my expression. Like, the fuck are you doing? Like, you don't know him or her or them. Yeah. Like, that's your man. Like, why is that important to you?
Yeah.
It's really strange. It's bizarre to me.
Well, it's the thing of, I think about it, and it kind of even relates to that point the example you gave, like, because that other group sort of had a bigger apparent sort of vote of yes from at least in the abstract, what looks like, well, a lot of people agreed with them. So therefore I don't want to I don't feel comfortable being too kind of going like, that's bad, or I don't like it. Cause I know, like, at least is my armchair justice psychologist. Some part of you's going, well, a lot of people like that thing. So therefore I can't totally be not liking it. Right. Which is a hard place, I think, for some people to be in when it gets to like celebrity, folks on whatever level, because there's whole kinds of ways to be a celebrity now, apparently. That it's like you don't want to be seen as not with them, and some people like have to have this,
But I feel like the platform breeds that mentality. It's very like, if you ever read a really good book, people talk about 1984 and like this totalitarian state, but a really great book to read about the social psychology that is Instagram is A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, because he talks about people getting lulled into this space of slavery, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and enjoying it,
Yeah.
because they want to be like, or, we're pack animals.
Yeah.
Tribalism, however you want to call it. And so what better way than to like create a space where you feel like you need to be more so part of this overarching society.
Yeah.
But I completely went off like to
Yes.
the apparel thing. One of the things that frustrates me, especially because I, was a big part of like the early streetwear space, is that space was built to combat trend. It was more about, there were all these different brands that were in the quote unquote streetwear space.
Mm-hmm.
And some were punk rock brands, and some were mod brands, and some were kind of outdoorsy brands, and some were just hip hop brands, and in different facets of hip hop brands, like, like kind of backpack rap, or all these different kind of subcultural things, but they were all these basically grassroots built things, and everybody was helping each other. But the thing was to not be, it was to build our own trends. And so now you have these things like where kids are like, so that it's kind of become the antithesis of what it started out to be. And if you look at a lot of brands, it's like 2 years ago, everybody had to do a rose. Mm-hmm. So everybody has like a rose on their shirt. And it's like, you can kind of, there was nothing definitive about the brands.
Mm-hmm.
And branding is supposed to, we identify with different brands because of their messaging.
Yeah.
Right. They're like people, if you will. And that's a scary concept.
Yeah.
It's very Edward Bernays concept. But, I identify with North Face because it's like never stop exploring. And it started as this very niche concept, and a bunch of like young outdoors people that were like, oh, I need to make something for this space. Nike, let's pour some rubber into like a waffle maker so we can like get more traction.
Mm-hmm.
Vans, let's Steve Van Doren, like, let's make sneakers for skateboarders because nobody's really doing it to that space. Right. But then when you get to this new space, it's like, well, I'm going to make what everybody else is making, almost verbatim. And the only thing that sets us apart is our marketing. Then it's a weird thing. It's not about the product anymore.
Right. It's about
it's like a weird hearts and minds campaign.
Yeah. How fast do you get your message out, and then also how do you get your message out, I guess, to the people who are going to be responsive or receptive to it? And it's it's interesting. There's a book, and I'm not going to name the particular book because I've been looking into like publishing and how you build your own publishing business, and something the book spoke to that I don't think it was intending to be, maybe I don't know, negative to the actual what's in the book, but it was saying like, if you're actually running a publishing print book business, what you're trying to figure out is how to, whatever the cost of producing those books and the people who want to read those books, that you get that thing down to the right spot so that you can return a profit. And also, though, hopefully you can speak to the people whom your small print house needs that message, right? So the positive side of it, I think, and it sounds very analogous. I remember sort of streetwear happening,
right?
In that you had folks who were looking for a certain style, and it was like, oh snap, they're making hoodies or t-shirts or pants or whatever, socks. They're doing this in a way that speaks to what I like to do. That least, and I'm thinking of this in the context of the 90s to the early 2000s, that the larger, if you went into the JC Penney's, they wouldn't necessarily have that. You know what I'm saying? If you went into to the big box stores and even the discount stores that get the aftermarket product, they're not going to necessarily have that because that's not, considered a mainstream dynamic. And then similarly, so then you're looking at the design and the construction and the other stuff, but then you're also like, is this speaking to my people? So to
exactly.
speak.
This helps me identify with my tribe or my group, or even like think about how many times you were wearing a T-shirt back in the day, or even a pair of sneakers at that point in time. Now, not so much, I guess, but
yeah,
and somebody was like, "Yo, what's that about? Who made that? Where'd you get that?"
Right. Where'd you find that?
You end up connecting, whether long term or short term, So it's but yes, entrepreneurship is an interesting space contemporarily. Like going back to like the original conversation. Sorry,
no, all good.
It's a different thing. It's a totally different thing now. You can get everything drop shipped, and it's not. I didn't become a designer to become an entrepreneur.
On the level,
I ended up becoming an entrepreneur.
It became a part of it,
right? By necessity, and I think the difference now is that it's, and I guess that's where my tangent with the Biggie Tupac record sold thing. The analogy that I didn't drive home was that there's a lot of people that are like trying to make product just to make product, as opposed to like really being driven by creativity. And that's okay. You know what I mean? Like it's not a criticism. It just is.
Yeah.
Or it's an observation.
Yeah. Well, I always think about it like one of the things I think when we're trying to evaluate sort of the world around us, especially even in this current situation that's going on from a public health, and people like, we're going to open back up outside and is that people make decisions, right, based on behavior. And to varying degrees, forces and powers can kind of like push things this way and that way. I mean, the most obvious form of anything, someone actually making someone else do something, is at the end of violence, right? That's like the high end. Because violence being the like, okay, I'm in mortal danger if I don't move right now. And then there's, other, steps down from there. Down to though, if you are not in the business of being violent to people and harming them, or at least not harming them on that level, at some point you have to acquiesce, right? You go like, well, what can I do to get you to see or do this thing, right? Now, there's us as people, we start making decisions, from clothing to how you want to show up and move through the world. You get some sort of feedback about how you carry yourself and what then also is acceptable in your, life spaces. You know what I'm saying? If you, and so like to a degree, other forces have a lot of control, right? Of the way it's presented, of the way it gets in front of you, of the social factors that, line up with it. But then there's other stuff that's sort of like, I don't really got a lot of control over that. And it's not necessarily, it was my very long-winded way to get to like, if you're making something and a lot of people buy it, even if it looks kind of whack, I mean, whatever. Like, like it doesn't, those people like it, and then on the other hand, if, because I think the other side of this, and this was my experience as I like to say, retired rapper, when you're like, man, I'm kicking this real rap for the people, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it don't matter if nobody likes my music. Sure. And it's like, wait a minute, Justice, it's a problem if no one likes your music, B.
Right.
Like, don't be delusional about what's happening and how you're spending your time. I think has always been my biggest, as a person that ever creates something, is think about the scope. If you just enjoy making weird beats in the crib and you don't, like that make you happy, and maybe you share them every once in a while, maybe every once in a while you make a mixtape or something, maybe you just give them to people to dance to or whatever, that's cool. also is cool if you're like, yo, I want to take, and it's cool, but it's also a different set of steps. If you say, I want to take my beats or my music or my paintings or my writing or, across the spectrum, I want millions of people to listen and see or hear or feel this, right? Then there's other steps that you need to take. And then there's also other skills that you either need to get yourself or get people who have those skills help you get over there. And
Absolutely.
I worry that folks have created these ways to sell a dream about getting things done that is really just to profiteer off of people who have high hopes and ambitions, and that makes me upset. Like that bothers me.
Like not Geppetto, Stromboli's Island of Lost Boys is the way I look at a lot of Instagram messaging. Drink more Tang and you can be an astronaut, or hustle and just all the stark white page, black lettering, stark black page, white lettering, these very de facto or presented as de facto blanket statement, stuff is a lot of it's actually really unhealthy messaging. From a psychological and emotional and or spiritual space. Like a lot of it's just bad. It's people projecting how they've been hurt, and labeling coping mechanisms as fact. And I say that because of the hustle, whatever, such and such, repeat, and people internalizing that stuff as law. And at the end of the day, it's like, have you ever seen that movie, Idiocracy?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. It's like Brondo, like you're being sold a bill of goods, whether you know it or not.
And I would add to that the hard thing, or the hard thing, or the tough thing about being, human, being us, is that even if whatever it is you're doing or you're now operating off of is, I can go, that's unhealthy. That doesn't make sense. If enough of y'all are doing it, I have to try to deal with it to try to have us be at peace with each other. And I think that's the piece that, I don't know, sometimes when I get on my justice being picky, persnickety about certain things, people go like, well, I mean, if they want to do that, let them do it. I'm like, well, yeah, but, some of us got to deal with y'all when y'all show up at, I've worked in a lot of different roles, and from food service to, phone service to, helping people in schools, and, the folks that someone always has to deal with that person who you may be fortunate to not have to deal with.
Right.
So when that person shows up with wild ideas and you're trying to help them get to keep their lights on, but they're like, they can't reference what you're trying to help them with because they're trying to operate off this rule they've embedded. It's really, really frustrating.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, I get a lot of younger people DMing me or trying to contact me about, I heard you mentored such and such. How do I get famous? And you're like, you're already kind of missing the plot, buddy. It's not about getting famous, or maybe it is for you, but I don't know that I'm the right person for you to. I'll engage a lot of the conversations on the front end. I'm not really it's part of my job, right?
Yeah.
Here, and so, within limits.
Yeah.
I'll talk to people kind of like, how old are you? What's your deal? What are you trying to do?
Right.
And then sometimes I just gotta be like, I can't. I'll try to send them someplace else or send them a book to read, and sometimes they turn into like deeper, lengthier conversations.
Yeah. Was always
but I was thinking about it, what you said. There's a really good book called The Wisdom of the Idiots by Idris Shah. A bunch of Sufi parables about having an understanding and seeing things for what they really are, and society saying that you're crazy or you're an idiot because you go, no, there's 2 droids in that land speeder that won't move along.
Like I'm positive there's 2 droids in there. And they're like, nah, man, look, he's cool. I'm like, look, y'all, it's right there.
There's an RT unit and a 3PO unit right there.
It's a big giant copper thing.
Yeah,
you don't see it.
But it's funny.
Word. So, I want to make 2 pivots, and I don't want to take too much of your night.
I'm good. I can talk all night.
But we keep rolling.
I'm sorry I go on these very long.
No, this is what I like. You know what I mean? So It's all good.
And I hope they end up coming back to a place of making sense.
Indeed. Well, I tell people all the time, take the best part for yourself. You know what I mean? Figure it out.
Okay. There you go.
I want to jump to something on rock climbing. Just a question, because if you've been doing it for a while, sure. Have you figured out how to deal with those? Like the real smooth, kind of wide holds that are like almost like somebody cut a beach ball and squished it and then stuck it on the wall. How have you fared with those? Because those were have been my stumbling block, so to speak.
I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, me neither.
Make sure that my hands are as dry as possible, and then widen the surface area.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it's palm, and then almost if you look at like a gecko's hand. Not that we have suction cups, but how I've worked with those is really opening my hand up wide so that I have as much surface area on those as possible. And they're frustrating as hell. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
But that's how I've been working through those.
Yeah, I haven't been up on a wall. I guess it's been about 1.5 years now, and in a minute. But I remember, at least like when we had gotten to a rhythm, of going for like a couple of months, and I was like, okay, I'm out here, I'm ready for this. And it was one of those on the gym that we usually used to go to, and they would maybe every couple of weeks rearrange a few. So like then they would kind of like let you know, like, all right, this one's. So there was this one hold I was just trying to get because I couldn't get it, and they had it was cool. This gym, they had a bouldering track, and it had numbers, so you could follow it around, and so you kind of could go like, I got to 67, I got to 88, like in terms of your own progress. And I remember, I think it was around 80 something or 90 something, and suffice to say, I never got it before they switched the hold out, but I was trying hard, man. I was like, man, I'm gonna get this hole.
There's a route that this brother Jordan that kind of like really got me into climbing. We know each other through art and then jiu-jitsu. But there's this route that we were trying to get, and it took like a couple weeks, and then I finally got it and wanted to go back to do it again. And it took like 3 weeks straight to get through this route. And then the following day after I got it once, and you want it to be fly. I want to, quote unquote, send it. And the next day they changed the routes. So that's my frustrating route story, and it took a long time to really like work through this thing. And I watched other people just, it's really fascinating to watch really good climbers do it.
Yeah.
Because you watch people like,
yeah,
wow, all right.
Mine was always what always kills me, because I'm a heavyweight, as they say, and when people will go like, if it's something that's all the way upside down or inverted in some way, and they'll just sort of go whoop, 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 and their legs will just kind of swing around, and I'm looking at them like, this must be because you're smaller than me, and I'm like, but I've seen there's like people my size that are practiced and skilled, and they do it regularly, who I've seen do the same maneuver smoothly, and part of it really is figuring out how to do it with your body, right? and not so much just a strength or a will thing, but it is still sort of like, you know, one hand I'm like, man, that's beautiful. Look how smooth and graceful they are. Another hand I'm like, man, fuck that guy, man. Dude just sliding through there, man. That's hard. That's hard work over there for me. You know, you got to check your ego a little bit, but it's that feeling. But I you know, let me ask you this: for you, because it sounds like your work with design and in creating things is. Do you think there's an interplay with some of the things that you also enjoy doing? That, like, I don't know, one feeds the other.
Absolutely. I won't work on stuff that I'm not. I mean, that's how I got into design. Like, I was collecting polo and I was collecting North Face, or at least apparel design. I was always drawing and things like that. You know, and then did skateboard graphics, got into the skateboard industry, and then started designing outerwear for snowboarding. So it's all like that's kind of like the streetwear space for me, at least in terms of hip hop, is a kind of like a painful space. Because I was doing, I was working on Fat Farm, and I was doing stuff with like Minnesota and Money Boss Players and the Jungle Brothers and Yasin Bey and John Forte, and all of that messaging was like very positive, right?
Yeah.
At the time. And even like, some of the Money Boss stuff wasn't super positive, but, largely, it wasn't like, and I was in the culture that I was designing for. So yeah, absolutely. Similarly with skateboarding, like if I'm not interested in the space that people want me to design for, I'll try to go do something else. Unless I'm like really struggling financially and really, 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 really need to work.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't. It's difficult. It's hard for me to pull up, and I can do it, and I've done it.
Yeah.
But it's like that's not fulfilling.
Yeah, it's not.
And it's rare that the checks that are attached to those projects are like enticing enough for me to be like, yeah. That doesn't mean like I'm not trying to be like a prima donna about it.
Yeah.
I'm just old enough to know that like I'm not going to produce my best work if I'm not inspired.
Right. If not fast, then
the things, like I would love to work on it. Like I have a bunch of concepts like for outdoor brands, and would love to work in that space again.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I would say that the outdoor world could use a shot in the arm.
Definitely.
There's some in a good way to anybody out there that's going to go on a like, a thing with that.
Sure.
Because I mean, I think I like doing stuff. I mean, outside and I have a couple years ago I did a like outdoor training thing, like outdoor went like forest survival piece, and and the folks that I did it with, their idea around being outdoors was not about this like man conquers nature and the fighting the wild beasts
right
deal, right? Because it's like, you're humans on Earth. This is the only place that you've known to be home.
Right.
It's not actually. It's not a fight. It shouldn't be a fight, at least in my estimation, and also in their teaching rationale, which is why I was attracted to working with those people to build my skills, right? And I but there's this other concept that I'm bothered by in outdoor stuff, which is just the idea, and this is from my knowledge of history, but also my engagement with different indigenous folks and folks that have educated me around this thing. But this general idea of emptiness, and that then you're like, you're fasting, going out into the vast emptiness. And it's like, well, some of these places are empty because people are not letting people who would inhabit them in some way or form or move through them in other ways be there, right? So our like idea of emptiness is in many ways it's a lie. It's not really true. Like
I think it's a very excuse the phrase Eurocentric concept.
Indeed. You know what I mean? And
not excuse the phrase, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think, you know what I mean?
Not outer space, guys.
Right. And even outer space is only space between the things.
Right.
When you get to, I mean, if it's moon people, like y'all, that people that think there's lizard people, if there's moon people, if I get to the moon, you know what I mean? I didn't mean y'all no disrespect because I didn't know about you. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
But,
hey,
peace. You know what I mean? What up with it? You know what I mean? So like, for you, I don't want you spilling the beans on your ideas, but in a sense that would, you know, be uncomfortable. What are some, you know, what would be something that would be interesting to you to do in the outdoor space, like to like get into?
I mean, I used to do a brand called Alphanumeric, and it was named that because of math and alphabets and everything was about communication and self-discovery and self-education. The quest for knowledge, educate yourself. I'm a high school dropout, but I've always been fascinated with learning. I just didn't really reap much from the system.
Mm-hmm.
And I also didn't have the self-discipline at that time. But always fascinated by science. And so I would probably revisit that brand. Because we made outerwear. It was more like skating, surfing, and snowboarding. And it would probably morph it into, trying to think of an analogy, kind of a Patagonia space. Try to be as socially responsible as possible and sustainable as possible, which is a really difficult thing, regardless. You know, people throw the term sustainable around very loosely.
Yeah.
And then do a lot of like outreach stuff. You know, I find it fascinating. My old earth lives uptown now, even though I grew up in Medina. And there's a climbing gym on, was it like Broadway at 128th? That's attached to Columbia University, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, last time I was in the city, which is a long time ago now, and they were working on it for a long time, diagonally, right across the street from the Apollo, there's a climbing gym being built, and it might be done now. But, you know, build workshops, help build workshops, community workshops, do community outreach stuff. Went to the last outdoor retailer show in Denver. And North Face does a lot of people with a lot of projects with original people. And would like to kind of, I don't want to say take that space, but be an ally to them. And also, I think, and so it's an interesting, you know, be able to introduce these spaces without people thinking that it's weird, because a lot of people have never been outside. I was fortunate enough where my mom like took me camping and hiking and snowshoeing and cross country skiing. So I actually hated New York when I moved there, because it was, you know, the opposite of Massachusetts or Western Mass, where I was born. But working to introduce that space to original people from the cities, and then also working with Native communities on helping them set up programs for themselves. And that's vague, you know.
That's how it should be. because the right and exact fine-tuned operational plan is for that's for you and those who add on with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, let other people, because I feel like, I think one that there's been especially over the last 10 years for sure, like a lot of organizing and energy around getting folks outdoors in a recreational sense. A lot of us have a lot of experience working and having to deal with stuff in the outdoors, from a what you do for a living sense, or you know what I'm saying, because it's like you learned about the good. If you ever had a family member that was in the trades or worked for like a water authority or something like that, they always know about the good boots and the good socks and the good, you know what I mean, because they're out in it and they like, yo, I need this so I can do what I need to do to feed my family. I'm not thinking about this so I can hike the Scooby-Doo trail at, Big Bear Forest Park or whatever. Like, I want these socks. I need these because I walk in water every day, that kind of thing. And I think that, but we are not always encouraged to embrace that kind of relationship with the outdoors as something that's virtuous in the way this other thing is. Obviously it's not marketed to us. It's marketed to like people who, they assume that they're sort of, I need to get away. And I like getting away. I've gotten away from things and been outside and realized, yeah, this is fun. You know what I'm saying? But it's also, I think there's an attracting piece that folks would respond to. Yeah. Well, hopefully I'd love to see you, do something with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would love to. So there's some fast. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking about Jim Beckworth, who is a famous black mountain man. And there's some, like all people, I'm sure some people are like, oh, that guy's got a nefarious history. And some people argue different points about Jim Beckworth, but it's definitely worth looking up. But it'd be cool to do like a Beckworth Foundation, something like that, using his name.
Well, I think that
promote the outdoor space, or maybe that's not the best name to use. But
well, it's also again, these are early. Yeah, right. This is research. This is you're thinking out the ideas, but it's also I think it's especially in light of some of the kind of newfound. I don't want to go off into that too much, but sort of some of us have embraced some ideas about indigenous lands that don't really hold up well to any sort of scrutiny. However, it is at least there is something there. There's so much about sort of the way Black people and other people of color have moved through these lands the last 300, 400 years that is still not really earthed, I would say. That I think that there's probably a lot of really interesting things that could be done looking at those aspects in detail. So I think that would be profound. I think there's something there. Well, I was going to ask you about, or I was thinking. So I did I did my justice, to the degree that I thought was appropriate scan of some of the things in Instagram, some other things you're interested in, and I discovered, the action figures. And I really like the action figures. I was hoping maybe we could talk about action figures for just a moment.
We talked about it a little bit before we started recording. So when I was a kid, my mom we didn't have a lot of money, but every now and then she would get me an action figure, and I had like Black Panther, Black Falcon. I feel like I had Luke Cage, Power Man. And then, but I wanted like a G.I. Joe, like the 12-inch G.I. Joes, or the Kung Fu
the big joints.
Yeah. And then I ended up getting one. And then, but then you have your friends that, their parents they have more money, so they get in toys and stuff. So my mom would like, make clothes for my action figures or stuff, so I could switch it up. And what year was it? I was working in Hong Kong on the Alphanumeric brand, and I met a gentleman by the name of Michael Lau, who was an artist and action figure customizer as well. And we ended up like becoming friends, and he ended up making like a figure of me he had this group of figures called The Gardener, like a series. It was an art project called The Gardener, and it was about playing in the garden with your action figures. So he was the gardener, and the action figures, the characters were the plants, if you will. And then I got hooked, and there were all these like action figure stores in Hong Kong. So I would like be buying parts, and then I came back, and when I was working out there, I'd stay for like 2-3 months at a time, and then come home and just kind of at work, but not as much. And then actually the first social media I was ever on was an action figure board called 1/6 Warriors. And I just started going in, and what I loved about it was that because I was sculpting making head sculpts and painting and building stuff with styrene and sewing clothes. And it was sparking a space of a creative space from my childhood that was, let's say, it was sort of unrequited, maybe. But just the fact that like I was like developing my own characters, whether they're sci-fi characters or building action figures of characters that I always wanted. And most importantly, the sense of accomplishment in finishing. And then getting to like share techniques and developing like new techniques. And it was really cool. And it was a great community, a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I've met some lifelong friends globally. Some friends in France, some friends in Germany, friends in UK, a lot of friends in Hong Kong and Japan, as well as here.
Yeah.
And like just like character development, like steampunk Blade, Daywalker, and then started building a sidekick for him, who is a Creole woman named Mojo Hannah, named after the song by who sings Mojo Hannah? I gotta find this out right now because Tammy Lynn. Somebody else sings Mojo Hannah, but anyway, Mojo Hannah from Louisiana, and just yeah, man. And then also historically, like I built a Hannibal Barca figure.
Oh, that's dope.
The Carthaginian, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't recognize Hannibal as being a black man. It's like it's North Africa, chill.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting to me because I like I said, we was conversing a little bit earlier because as a kid, you wanted well, one, if there was a black act like me, I remember me and my brother having a however old, had to be maybe 7 or 8, 6. I had to be maybe, I don't remember when Stalker came out, the small one, and us like debating who gets to buy Stalker. You know what I mean? Because we have our little money, and my mom's thing was always, which I think was her. I don't know if she that was this clever intentionally, but I'm assuming she was because my mom's pretty dope. But it was like, well, look, you got this, right? So you got this $5. Go in there, figure out what you could do with this $5 in terms of a toy or something every once in a while or whatever. And so we were trying to get the G.I. Joe's little joints. And we were like, oh man, they got this guy, this guy. And it's like, well, there's only one black dude. And it's like, well, who gets to buy the black? Because you want the black dude. Yeah. You want the one that looks like you. And so then our thing was anybody you couldn't see their face, they were probably black. You know what I mean? So Snake Eyes was black.
Snake Eyes.
Snake Eyes was black. You know what I'm saying? And we had to have this whole kind of debate about who gets to pick that action figure. And in recent years, I've come across some sites on Instagram, actually enough, of cats that do, you know, like the kit bashing and they making their custom stuff. And there's a couple of them that does, like, there's a one, I think it's Black Action Figure Vault or something. I'll send it to you. And it, you know, dude, just he makes some stuff, then he also will share about other like black action figures that are.
The brother from Philly.
I've come across that brother just recently. I don't know if it's the same dude or not. I think it might be.
I think he was. I'm sure he's had some people that have tried to like lowball him on some stuff. I asked him what his pricing was, and then he came back and it was high, and I was like, "Look, I don't doubt it's worth that. I just don't have that kind of bread right now. But I just dig what you do."
Yeah, I saw some of his work. I was like, I was fascinated. Yeah,
he's really, 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 really good.
Yeah, I mean, and I thought to ask a question. I'm like, have people been making action figures? How long have people been doing this? I feel like I never knew this was something I could do at home, man.
Really, there's some really, really talented people out there. Really.
And I'm big on folks learning that there's actually like other ways to bring something like into your world if maybe you can't get it off the shelf. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, it's action figures. You can do this with them, and you know. And I don't know what to do with my action. When I was a kid, I knew exactly what to do with my action figures. I go outside and play with them. You know what I'm saying? Now I kind of get them. I'm like, well, I want to play with it, but I don't really know where to play with it. I don't know how much time I got to play. And then like, you know, I get distracted and I have to move on to other things. But I look at it and go, that's cool. You know what I'm saying? I really. So I want to save some for later, as I like to say.
Okay.
And so I want to get us out on, let's see, what I've been closing on recently is what's maybe an album or a movie or something of the like that you may have felt one way about in the past that shows up or you feel differently about today.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I mean, and there's all kinds of things. I think as we age, and we experience things and grow, our understanding, I would hope, becomes clearer. I think one of my favorite movies ever is Blade Runner.
I just watched Blade Runner again a couple weeks ago. I think because we were talking. I don't know if
I'm a big Philip K. Dick fan. Really, I like his science fiction. And I like the psychology behind a lot of his science fiction. I'd never considered the concept of Deckard possibly being a replicant. That never crossed my mind. Like Rachel obviously was like, oh yeah, she is.
Yeah.
I don't know what's differently I feel about it, but that was after the new Blade Runner came out.
Yeah, I haven't seen the new one, and I've been given really some. I've been talking. I wanted to rewatch the older one because I always with the older one, they got the director's cut now. Right. It's easy to get to, but like there was the one that was available in the 90s, I guess, when we started renting videos and stuff. And you'd be like, oh, that's Blade Runner. And I would always choose to watch Blade Runner at the absolute worst time to try to watch Blade Runner, which is if you've been out kicking it and it's really late and you kind of tired. And, like after 1 a.m. and you're like, I'm going to tune in and watch the Blade Runner. And you're like, I think I saw the whole movie. But I don't know if I saw the whole movie because it was too late and I may have imbibed in some things. And it's difficult. So I tried to, and then the director's cut version, I was like, all right, let me watch it. And then, so like I said, I just refreshed my memory on that. And I was like, I want to watch the 2049, but I wanted to remember the stuff that was salient in the original. You know what I mean? So,
right.
All right.
off the top, and I'm sure there are. I'm sure we'll like get off, and I'll be like, "Oh man, such and such, and why didn't I say that?" Or what about this thing? Interesting.
Well, I mean, the beauty of the magic of the internet is that we could table it and we could come back to it. And also, I would say, I'm gonna say this on the record before I let you go. You have a myriad of things that that you are in your sphere of understanding, so to speak, and I would like to explore some of those things in future conversations.
I would love to. I'd really like to talk about rock and roll.
Yes, and that was
rhythm and blues and that space.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that was on my mind that I didn't even feel like we could get to because I need to do a little more study to be ready so that we could just do that. So I'd love to have you back on.
I'd love to come back
and dig into one of those. Is there anything you want to just share for the good of the order, the good of the universe before I wrap us up?
All of the above is caused by the Son of Man, and it ain't no mystery.
Indeed, so
those are simple things to live by.
Yes, sir. Well, God, I thank you. I appreciate you for sharing some of your story with me today. It's so and also, well, I'll say something for later because even as we were talking, I'm like, oh, you was involved in that, and you was involved, like, you know, I mean, things that you said that I didn't even have time that resonated to points of things, and I want to come back to it. But
Day t-shirts.
See, we got to. Well, I'll say that for. I'll say this for private stock. We got another joke about that, but I want to say, God, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you having me. I appreciate you.
All right, thank you for joining me. This has been the Ask Your Oldhead Podcast with Justice Rajee and my guest Alyasha. This we always close with. Peace.
Peace.